Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the MSP Initiative Live. We're coming to you post Channel Strong Tour Northeast. So we just went through another 2-week tour here through anywhere from Virginia all the way up to I think New Hampshire. We got to, and it was nice to actually get out and get into the Northeast. Right? I mean, I've been doing this for a little while now, and it was a little bit hard to get into Northeast because it was a little bit on lock for a while. So all things being considered, we appreciate everyone that came out to that, and for everyone that's in the kind of Southwest region, we're coming to you next. So stay tuned while we kind of finalize that, and we'll get some information on that. So we actually bring a guest on today who was actually involved in our Channel Strong Midwest run coming into the last kind of stretch there. So I'm going to happily welcome to the show Eric Clark. Eric, why don't you introduce yourself, your company, give us a little bit of background.
Sure. Hey, thanks for having me. And it was good to see you guys in person. You guys rolled through Wisconsin here. So my name is Eric Clark. I work for a company called Swicktech, and I'll spell that because it can be misinterpreted. So it's SWICK Technologies, not Swift or Stick or Switch. And my role at the company is a client success role. So I help with account management, marketing, and outside sales. So cover a couple of those different things. We also help and do a lot of different presentations and such. So we're a managed service provider. Obviously, it's probably why we're on your show here. So I think our focus lies is we're heavily focused on cybersecurity. We practice a lot of the NIST 800, 171 things that were in place. And now we've really shifted that to the new CMMC modality up to level 3. So we're helping businesses kind of go through a similar process to button up their cybersecurity as well. Otherwise, we have a help desk that's staffed locally here in Wisconsin. We do a lot of the managed services. So we're IT department for some companies, we're fractional for others, complement and support and supplement other IT professionals in the region.
Awesome. So I'm going to do something we usually, just started doing. I'm going to allow other folks that are on the live to actually just jump into the conversation. We'll have more of like an open convo. So you guys can unmute if you guys want to jump into the conversation at any point in time. So Eric, let's, since you're in cybersecurity, first of all, congratulations. The Bucks won the NBA.
Yeah, and that was a big deal, man. It was great for the economy too, by the way, considering the year we just came off of. So super exciting. I'm more of a Packers fan than a Bucks fan, but you gotta just, when that stuff happens, it doesn't matter. You gotta get into it. So I totally did for a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, trust me, our Sixers here in Philadelphia thought they were going to be riding high, and didn't quite work out as it usually doesn't work out here in Philadelphia. Only twice in my lifetime, right? Phillies and the Eagles. And hey, listen, I should count my blessings. I think somebody actually, Sade, who's our marketing coordinator, she's like, well, that's where you gamble. I was like, yeah, I gambled a lot of money in that South Philadelphia sports complex for a long time. I only won twice, so I guess my odds aren't great, but hey, congrats on that. And I didn't have a chance to actually make it out to Wisconsin, but I heard it was a great time. I heard it's like if anybody hasn't been out to Wisconsin, I hate to even say it, don't get offended. Everybody's like, oh, it's like a mini Chicago. I'm like, I've been to Chicago, I haven't been to Wisconsin. I don't want to even use that terminology.
Yeah, it's a small city. It's very quaint in contrast to like Chicago, very navigable and very friendly, lots of good eating and stuff. But it's a very small city in contrast to Chicago. So it's certainly less intimidating. If you're from a big city, you might be like, wow, this is it. But for us, it's a nice place.
Did John Fry says Philly sports are cursed. Hey, John, at least I was in Minnesota to watch your TB12, right? Mr. Tom Brady himself go for the all-time yards, the all-time, attempts, no, punts. And yeah, we still beat you in then, pal. So don't forget that. Let's talk about security for a second. CMMC, since you brought it up.
Thanks.
It looks, like it's, if you were to talk to somebody who's never looked at CMMC before and explain to them why CMMC versus all the other ones, that you could, try and, comply with and get certified and get that outside audit, whatever, like, for example, and I'm not trying to get super granular, but like, why is CMMC versus a a SOC 2, or why, like why concentrate on that specifically? Is it the vertical that you support? Is it just it's becoming in your mind the preeminent answer in terms of this, the outside,
It's
think?
more the latter. It's definitely the preeminent kind of direction here. I mean, even considering the NIST 800-171 and rolling that out several years ago, it's a benchmark strategy that doesn't change. The terminology is consistent. It's a governing body. So there's accountability. And when you talk about like audits that are coming down the pike, in 2026, you can get an outside audit for NIST, but it wasn't like it was recommended. No one really did it. People checked boxes and said, let's just check that box, but then no one ever, there's no checks and balances. So this is a formal governing body that's going to hold a certain standard to these things, and you need to do them. And that's only if you have, CUI or FIC and things of that nature, where you're doing work in the supply chain of the DoD or the government, or the federal government. But if you're not, it's a great way to focus your cybersecurity efforts, because it's the tippy top, right?
So are you incorporating that into your marketing strategy, right? Like when you go present to a prospective customer, does that come into the equation? Like, do you have to spend a lot of time explaining what that even is?
It depends. Some people know it, right? Some people know more than I do about it because they're a compliance officer, or a compliance manager at certain companies. And here in Wisconsin, we have a ton of manufacturing. I can throw a rock and hit one no matter where I stand in the state. They're just everywhere. So by default of being geographically located where we're at in Southeast Wisconsin, there's a lot of manufacturers. So just the supply chain of that, there's a lot of that kind of activity happening regardless. So to answer your question, does it come up in conversation? I try to now bring it up because I don't know that a lot of other people want to. It's compliance. It's thick. It's heavy. It's mundane. It's granular. It's detailed. Not many people want to go down that path. They want to just do their job and get paid and move on and say it's good enough. That's not how we're operating. We're operating at a very, very acutely detailed level in our approach to this market. So, we helped one of the first 15 companies go through CMMC level 3 for their pre-audit, and only 15 companies were required to do that by the federal government. You don't know who those companies are, but we had one of them, and we got them through the finish line. And the things that were nixed on that assessment, or the pre-assessment, were like 3 things. And one of the things is like, well, you haven't been in this environment long enough. Well, nobody can help that. That's not our fault. So there weren't things that like even fell on our plate that we could have had an impact on yet. So we're really proud of that work. Our team busted their tails to get that done. And as a result, we blazed a trail here now where we feel very confident with that approach already. But we've been doing this stuff for ourselves. We eat our own dog food. So we've been rocking this kind of modality for a very long time. And now I'm bringing it to market to clients, no matter where they're at in that process. They might be sub level 1, they might be level 2, which is that transitionary phase. So there's a lot of places someone can fall, but we're prepared for it.
Sure. So along the same thought, since we're in this kind of arena, where does the outside SIEM, SOC, all the security products that have popped up, XDR, MDR, like Edge, and now I know SASE is not even really there yet, right? It's coming down the pipe. Like, where does that fit in CMMC? Is that level 5? Is that like what? Or do they even talk about that in the CMMC level?
So there are things. So we actually did some content on this, some presentations and such, webinars and so forth, where we have some good content that covers this. We try to break it down by the levels. So we do have a whole presentation on just like level 1, and we tried to map it to break it, like what I would say, break down Fisher Price or break down Barney style. But we said like, okay, here's this specific thing they're saying. So for example, I have some of it on my screen here, but like, for access control, CMMC level 1, there's 6 domains out of the 17 entire controls. One of them is like limit information system access to authorized users, blah, 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 blah. Very specific statement. So we break that down into like, well, what needs to be done from a technical standpoint for this? Because there are things that fall outside of the tech realm that people need to do, like building security and such. We don't do that. But then we go insofar as to say like, well, what does this actually mean? Like what has to be done? So things like multi-factor authentication, things like, EDR and things of that nature. Some of these things do live further on down the spectrum towards level 3, but some of them you're going to need to do anyways. So, and it's easy, low hanging fruit. So we try to identify what can you just do that's impactful right now to kind of cover the most ground possible, the best bang for your buck to get that level 1. Because if you're going to maintain any of those government contracts or the DoD contracts, you have to at least be level one. And a lot of folks are probably already level one if you're doing that work today. So
Yeah.
it's a matter of if you're going to want to maintain them or acquire new, contracts, you're going to want to kind of level up to that level 3. So I know I'm kind of giving you the political answer. I'm not giving you a lot of specifics.
No, I mean, listen, I mean, it's a very, I mean, if you're saying it's a preeminent answer, right? It's the one that everybody's saying is, hey, if you're going to do one, this is the one.
Mm-hmm.
Then obviously it's going to be multifaceted. There's no one answer.
Correct. Yep. Yep. But the big thing is like the documentation that goes into it. So everything needs to be auditable. I think that's the right way to say it. So like if someone's coming into your physical building, there needs to be an event log and locked access. And then who's auditing that event log and where is that stored and how is that protected? So you need to be able to serve up all of the validation and proof of these things. So when you get audited, you can say, yes, Susie May came in on October 4th at this time, and all of our computers in our office are all locked. Everything that might be exposed, like a switch, is locked by access, and only certain people have access to it. And this is how we track their access. And if they did go in there, here's how we. So it's a lot of this validation of things and documenting these processes and people to know that it's all covered. Otherwise, if you don't know, if 10 people have access to the same computer on the shop floor and there's no camera on it and there's no event logs, then how do you know that it wasn't Bill, Bob, or Tom, or all 3 of them? You have to be able to prove that and validate that.
No, 100%. I agree wholeheartedly. So since it seems like you're really deep down security land, I'd love to pick your brain on, and I hope it's not totally old news yet. The supply chain stuff, right? I mean, it seemed, like it's not just, hey, this vendor who also plays in our space, got hit somewhere else that really doesn't touch us. I mean, we've had more recent one, right? That kind of hits home. So how does that fall into the scheme of things from your perspective, right? Like, do your customers ask you about that? Is that like, do you proactively talk to people about it? Because the headlines are out there. I mean, people watch or read whatever they do. I mean, it's not hard to stumble into it. So,
yeah, I would say, gosh, one of the things that just came up even today, I'm trying to find, there was just a communication that went out from our SOC about an attack that just happened. So we do have a SOC and we're really on top of these things. So oftentimes if you see in a headline, it's not going to be much longer before you're going to see a communication from our SOC team that's going to tell you, hey, if you're our client and you have this agreement, we are already aware of this. We've already taken these actions. You are protected. Here's the action you need to take, or you don't have to take any action, or so forth, right? If you're not an agreement client and we've touched your infrastructure at some point, way, shape, or form, again, this is what's happening. Here's what you need to do. And if you want us to do it, there's a billable event. Do you want us to do that? Yes or no? And it's critical. So in some cases, we'll spin up our client engagement team and we'll get on the phones and start doing outreach. Like, you need to address this immediately or as soon as possible. When's a good time to take your network down to address this critical patch that has to happen for Microsoft or whatever that looks like. So our finger is definitely on the pulse. We try to keep our client base as informed as possible, given the fact that there's a number of threats that are happening at any given point in time. The EDR stuff really helps obviously a lot too, to kind of look for that foothold detection, things of that nature.
So like when you guys say you run your own SOC, like, did you staff it up? You built it on your own, or are you using components from an outside vendor, or how does that work?
Yeah, no, we staffed it ourselves. So it's internally staffed. Meets all the requirements of a SOC for us to officially say that, Security Operations Center. So, I'm trying to just look at Hive Nightmare, or also known as the Serious Sam, is the one I just saw go out this morning. So we have, a channel internally for advisories. So if something critical is happening, one of our employees might catch that, and then they'll kick it over to the SOC or vice versa. And then they're jumping on that, kind of all hands on deck in that department.
Wow. Now it's very interesting. I've run into a lot of MSPs who say it's really hard to actually build it up. And hey, there's just not a lot of people out there with the skill set that we can find, and they tend to just outsource, right?
I don't know the business reasons for not outsourcing it, but I know it took some time for us to build that. And it was being built for quite some time before we could say that that is something that we have. But given the work that we're doing, especially considering CMMI and things like that, or CMMC, it's a necessary component.
No, totally understand. So do you even offer anything out there from a like good old fashioned managed services standpoint? Are you even offering any level where the security isn't baked in? Like, or is that just not even an option anymore?
Yeah, it's interesting you ask, because we've made the decision to include a lot of these layered pieces of software and things of that nature, just because it's a better outcome. If we're accountable for your IT and managing that, then to say like, well, you need to pay us more so we can include this, we just included it, take it on the chin, and then have that value add piece there. So we've kind of just leveled up our security holistically throughout our practice. So we are in the midst of doing some rebranding things about like our go-to-market for our agreements and how we do all of that. Are we an MSSP? Are we an MSP? I think we're an MSP that has an MSSP division. We have a SOC and so forth. MSSPs, when you look at the landscape, this usually they're a lot smaller operations. We're not incredibly large. We're also not very small. We have, a little over 30 people at Swicktech, and we're growing rapidly. We have a lot of open positions out there we're trying to fill at the moment. So we see a lot of growth in our future here.
So, current event style, I mean, we're hearing potentially that people might have to, and again, I'm listening to the news, I'm watching the news just like everyone else. If tomorrow somebody came out and said, oh, no, social distancing, put the masks on, lockdown again, are your customers and your team better prepared to handle that scenario than I assume from the last time?
Yeah, one of our favorite quotes is from Louis Pasteur: "Chance favors the prepared mind." Mm-hmm. And I'll say that when it happened the first time, there was no change for us from a technology standpoint. The difference was on Friday when I went home, I brought my laptop with me, grabbed a couple monitors, and then as that all rolled out and no one ever went back, we got to order some fancier equipment to make sure our home offices were a little bit more inept and like comfortable. But out of the gate, no, we run on Microsoft Teams. We were one of the first 100 companies to beta test Teams in its infancy. And so we're, again, eating our own dog food. We're fully fledged on that platform. So at least from our perspective, there wasn't any change to our business. A lot of our clients had already kind of followed our path with that. So easy transition for them. And then some ones that hadn't, or there were some laggards, or they weren't on that precipice just yet. Of course, we're there to help them and support those efforts and make sure that they have a good transition. So there's a bit of, when we track our tickets and everything like that, so we could look at the percentages and the type of tickets and what we're like doing our work on and so forth. So it was interesting to see that initial wave of how many tickets were open to help with that. And then it calmed down, business as usual for a while, by and large. And then that wave that when people came back, we had to go the opposite direction with that to get people back in the office. So if there is a second wave of this that puts us in a similar position, we'll be in a much stronger place. And by we, I mean collectively, like our client base, I think have all come quite a bit further since the first time. And I imagine everyone has, right? It's forced everyone's hand. We were all going down this path slowly, and it was really culturally hard for some folks to wrap their heads around, like, what do you mean I can't see that person working at their desk? But digitally, the traces that we can leave behind on all of the monitoring agents, people are working or not. We don't, to a level of certainty whether or not they're being productive. And with things like Teams, you're accountable to your team. If you're not answering your calls all day and your status or whatever is showing you as away, or you've been away from your keyboard for the last 3 hours, it's like, what the hell are you doing?
That's a great question.
Heard some really interesting stories from people.
I'm doing. I'm like, I'm on calls all day long.
Yeah. My family, my mom had said she works at some healthcare company filing claims for insurance and such. And she said, one of these guys got fired because during COVID, he just like wasn't working. He was like out on the golf course living his best life. And then he got fired. He like broke down and cried. He's like, oh, I knew I shouldn't have been doing this stuff. It's like, well, that's an extreme scenario. But the people that are going to do that kind of stuff, they weren't great workers to begin with. I think they were just trying to float through their day as best they could or something,
100%. How much does obviously this is a fairly new announcement, kind of, from Inspire. How much have you adopted like Windows Virtual Desktop, Azure Virtual Desktop, that whole deployment, rather than, kind of more of the still relying on the device, I guess? Because in those environments, they don't care what device you're coming from practically.
I don't have a good answer to that question. That's out of my purview of what I'm exposed to in the business. But I can say that we do a lot with Microsoft, and we follow their lead as much as we possibly can in every facet. So I know we have a DevOps team as well, and we're heavily focused on the Microsoft Azure and Azure Gov environments. We have a lot of qualifications there too. In that sense, I see us just following whatever Microsoft is doing.
Got it.
And again,
Have
eating our own dog food. So when someone asks us about it, we can say this not worked for us, so on and so forth.
100%. Have you guys, and if it's above you, that's fine. Have you guys played with the Sentinel solution from Microsoft?
I've heard of, yep. So I only know it because I've heard it being talked about a bunch. But yes, I've heard of it, and that's where it gets. So me not being a technical person, I know there's a SIM, and this is where these are technical terms. Is it SIEM or is it SIM?
Yeah,
And
SIEM. I guess it
yeah,
depends on
and I
potato,
think
potato.
Sentinel is one of the things that falls within that, if I'm not mistaken, or can.
Got it. Where do you see things going? I mean, so first of all, are you doing things on a national basis, or are you more regional?
No, we are heavily regional, Northern Illinois, Southeast Wisconsin, by and large, but the clients that we work with have footprints in satellite offices throughout the US. So that's coast to coast, south to north, et cetera. And then we have a number of companies that we work with that have global headquarters as well. So we'll work, one of the companies I was talking to earlier this morning, they're in Finland, so we got to be mindful of time for that. That's why those are morning calls, not afternoon calls, because their day is ending and ours is beginning. So certainly we have not very many geographical constraints at all, but just based on proximity, we do a lot of business in our backyard, so to speak.
Got it. So obviously the age-old problem, right? Boots on the ground. Is that even a concern anymore, or is it mostly more virtual at this point?
Yeah, that's so when everything happened, me being in the outside sales seat in a traditionalist to some degree, I'm like, this isn't going to work. Like, I need to go build rapport and build trust, and that happens in person and shaking hands and getting to know people face to face, and everything happened virtually. We landed some of the biggest accounts we've ever seen. I've never met some of these people still today, even in person. I haven't shaken their hand. I've not been to their office. They have not been to ours, and business is still happening perfectly fine. So from a support standpoint, I would say 90 to 95% of the work we do is remote. And every now and again, we need to get boots on the ground. So in some cases where clients are in like North Carolina, or, we have some in Mexico and, wherever, all over, we'll fly our staff there. And, that can be part of the proposal process. Like, you're going to pay for room and board and so forth and plane tickets. So we'll do that to deploy like a project. If there's some M&A activity and one of our clients acquired somebody else and they need us to go set up their network stack, so that way it's all going to be congruent with the entity that did the acquiring. We have that all kind of pre-configured, so we just need to drop it out there. We'll work with IT on site, hold their hands. We have really strong documentation of things. So there's photographs documented for every little kind of wire that's happening. So we know exactly what someone is looking at based on what they're telling us. Documentation is like, I feel like there should be a stronger word for the word documentation and our approach to it, because it's so, the way we document everything for every client is the same. Obviously what lives there is very different, but that allows us to take the same approach to everybody. So our entire team, we don't have one single threaded point of contact that has all this context that's in John's head. So if John leaves on vacation or whatever happens to him, we're okay. We know exactly what to do here because it's all been kept up to date. So back to the original question, boots on the ground, it's limited. There is a need for it and we can accommodate that. If someone needs a lot of that, then that might look a little different. If someone's in Florida and they're like, we need someone here every day of the week, then that's not going to work.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's something to be said for co-managed versus managed, right? I mean, when you're working with an already pre-existing internal IT resource department team, right? I mean, I got to think the conversation is just a little bit different than the normal stuff.
Yeah. One of the conversations, in the sales team, it's like, well, Eric, I'm talking to a CFO. I have my IT manager is in the next room over. And when I say, hey, Joe, come here and fix this, he comes and fixes it. I'm like, right. But then Joe didn't document that. There's no ticket around it. There's no formal process. We don't know if it's going to happen again. We don't know if it's happened to other people. And so you doing that is disrupting his day, taking away from the project he's working on, the help from the other people. You're getting white glove treatment, which we can still accommodate, but we can put some process around that. So, those problems will start to go away. We can fix them at the root rather than the Band-Aid that he's coming to put on every day, random hours of the day throughout the day. So maybe he won't be in there in 2 minutes, but someone will get to it within the first, hour of that request based on your agreement or whatever that looks like. And then we're going to take care of it. And if we need to dispatch a boot on the ground, then we'll take care of that too. And if we can work collaboratively with the person who's there, Joe, whatever their name is, then that'll happen. So sometimes it's a cultural change more than anything. And once people get used to that, it ends up being a better process. You can text us the problem, you can call us with the problem, you can use your system tray, you can email us. We'll accommodate whatever communication modality you prefer. And then on our side, it all looks the same to us. It doesn't matter. But if it's easy for you to send me a text that you have a problem, then great. Let's accommodate that. So it is a little bit of change sometimes in some cases where there's that expectation that someone's going to be in their office in 3 minutes after they yelled out their name. That's probably not how you want to be dealing with that anyways.
Well, some people are a little bit old school, just a little bit.
Yeah.
So obviously there's been a lot of talk about what's the lowest common denominator, right? What's the most minimal thing that you would be willing to take on? And of course, that always bubbles back into the security conversation that we started earlier, which is, hey, listen, the low hanging fruit are the small guys that don't want to turn stuff on because it changes their flow, right? It's something new. They're pushing back against it. That's where the bad guys are having an easier time getting into an email account because you're using your password everywhere, or you didn't have MFA enabled, or, that turn, or you see Colonial Pipeline, you saw, some of the supply chain stuff. Some of it was, you thought it was like, oh, they were coming out from every angle. And it was like, I was like, no, they George's PayPal password got discovered over here. And they said, hey, maybe he's using it over here. And that was it, it wasn't super hard. Like, what is the minimum you'll allow? And this feeds back into two parts, right?
Yep.
Hey, what's a good customer? What's a bad customer? What's the base, right?
Yeah.
And then on the other side, it's, hey, obviously this is now feeding into cybersecurity land from an insurance standpoint, right? Like, are you already feeling that from maybe your customers, vendors, with the questionnaires that they're getting, or the ones that you're dealing with for your own company, right? To make sure that you're whole, like, it kind of feels like they're, colliding a little bit.
There's a lot to unpack with that to some degree. We have something that we've quantified as our ideal client profile. So as much as someone's interviewing us, I assure you that I'm interviewing them harder. Because it needs to be, there needs to be an alignment and a fit. And I know that can be, it needs to be a fit. That sounds cheesy, but quite literally, there has to be a fit, or it's not going to work. It's going to break down very fast. And if I have the foresight to see where that's going to go, then I'll pull the plug out of the gate and push back and say, you know what, this isn't going to work. And let's just save everyone's time. And that's respectful enough. I'm not trying to be mean to people or so elitist, but there is that threshold of, you talk about the insurance side of things. We're seeing two things happen there right now, and I'll come back to the other part of the question. But the number one is there's a number of companies that if they don't put in multi-factor authentication, they will not have an insurance policy for cyber through their insurance provider. So they're almost kind of forcing their hand to go down the path, which is great. We've been pumping that message. There's a very funny video of me saying MFA about 200 times in a single video that one of our marketing people chopped together and made it just say that a whole bunch of times. And then to that degree, so that's finally happening. We've been beating that drum for a long time. And then additionally, if someone's had a cyber attack or a ransomware or some sort of event, I don't wish that on anybody. Obviously, it's a matter of when, not if. However, if you've experienced that, then you're not questioning all the stuff I'm talking about, and you're taking IT seriously. You'll do anything to never experience that pain again. So having conversations that are brought to us from insurance partners, where there's some sort of relationship where they're sending us referrals, those are the most beautiful referral you could ever get, because that person just had a problem, whether it was a ransomware attack or whatever. They're not happy with their current provider because they obviously couldn't do enough to protect them. And they're warm. We know there's some sort of relationship. It was a warm introduction. So there's a lot happening where there's these events happening, and then there's the cyber, the incident response team where they're going and investigating what happened to help the insurance company quantify if it was an event that they should be covering or not. So from a referral standpoint, those are both really great referral places. But for us, I would say one of the security is critically important, but additionally is, are you growth minded or not? Are you one of those manufacturers? If I walk into your office and it looks like you're one of the good old boys that's hanging out at the hunting club too much because your office has become your trophy room, or the giant number of, big boats in your parking lot. Like if you're taking your money from your company, you're funding your own personal hobby, you're not putting that money back in, and your technologies from 2008 was the last time you addressed it. Like, I'm already going to tell you this is going to be a painful relationship, because we're not going to want to support any of the stuff you have. And if we do, we're going to fix all of it. So not only are you going to pay us for a support contract, you're going to probably have a whole mess of capital expenses for project work to get all this stuff up to a 2021 secure world. And if that's something you're uncomfortable with, then you're probably going to need to go find a reactive IT person that's going to just, be there when you pick up the phone to go deal with your nightmare. But if it's us, we're going to get ahead of all of this stuff. We're going to fix it tomorrow, basically. And if they don't jive with that, then it's like a non sequitur. Like, it's not going to happen. And it's nobody's fault. It's totally cool. Like, it's literally your business. You can do whatever you want. But if you were going to engage with us on the IT side and we're responsible for it, then we need to take some of the risk off the plate here and do things a different way. So I would say growth mindedness, are these companies growing? Are they reinvesting in the business? Are they taking IT seriously? Size isn't really as important as it is maturity of that stuff. I mean, we have some small operations where they do big numbers because that's just the industry they're in. The real estate industry, there's a couple people at an office, but they're doing big numbers, and they want to leverage technology heavily. So size of a company isn't always the same as the maturity of what they need from an IT perspective. So those are things that I try to look at as them reading the room, looking at what's going on, how they're investing, what's important to them, where the critical things are, and when's the last time they addressed IT, and are they addressing it now because they perceive a need to, or is it this obligatory commoditized, oh yeah, here's the IT stuff that I hate and don't care about. But if I walk back and unplug your server, what's going to stop working? That's a good way to have some immediate value.
That's a great test, right? Walk into somebody's building, be like, "Boo!"
Yep.
And be like, "Yep, everything's good. You didn't need that server." Could you imagine? You always hear these horror stories that the joke about the IT guy left on bad terms. He cut all the cables on the way out the door.
That'd be terrifying for some businesses, and that's not too far fetched either. I mean, that's literally happened at some big companies that we've seen in the news.
Yeah, they just literally went.
Mm-hmm.
Especially
it's like don't spit in the food. Don't talk crap to your waiter, right? They'll spit in your food. Like, yeah, might be careful with the RT guy. But just saying.
Yeah, that's a good point. It sounds like you're dealing a little bit in the government space, right? They've obviously set certain rules, obligations, what have you. Let's talk about from the hiring side. Like when you go out there and you're trying to fill positions like you say you are, I mean, how much extra work do you have to go into in order to, obviously background checks and all the other stuff that normally happens, but if, there's probably additional hurdles to jump through in order to have somebody work on an account if they're in a particular sector, right? And then, how do you protect yourself from the rogue person that comes in and is just a bad apple?
Yeah, the systems take control of that. Not any one person holds all the keys, and everything's gated along the way with checks and balances in place. So we don't, quite honestly, the rogue scenario will not impact us, which is a pretty beautiful thing. And there's we have geofencing in place. Like if you try to access a certain thing and you're not at that computer, at that building, at this time, it's not going to happen. And if it does, it's going to alert someone that's like, whoa, this is an anomaly detection, something's happening here. So there's a lot of layers to how we deal with that. On the hiring side, we've been rolling out background checks at a certain security level for a very long time. So nothing new is changing there. And that's only predicated on if that person is going to be touching that CUI or handling it in any way, shape, or form. So not everyone needs to adhere to all that stuff, because we can isolate a lot of these things. Someone might not be able to get into that Azure Gov tenant at all if all these other criteria are met. Like I mentioned, physical location, computer IP address, time of day, and so forth. Because some of the companies that are in different parts of the world, they literally cannot touch it, as according to some of those regulations. So, on the engineering side, the people that do the work here and push the buttons and turn the knobs, they're very intelligent, but they're also very cautious and concerned. They don't want to get caught up in that stuff. They don't want to fall scrutiny to some sort of audit. The government's handing out fines I think it was $3 billion in 2019 or something, very, very large. I could be wrong. I have the stats, but it's either 300 million, I think, in fines in 2019 for people that said that they were doing something and they weren't. So those audits are very, very real. And they're actively seeking them out. Like the government is trying to like sniff those things out and find the people that are not in compliance. So they're actively looking for it. So with that as a concern looming over you and us doing that work, like I mentioned, one of the first 15 companies, I better believe we're under some scrutiny and being watched to some level, right? And to some degree. So if that stuff isn't met, it'd be a problem. So certainly the people doing the work, they're, on the talent side, that's hard though. It's hard to find good talent at a price that's, going to make sense for someone coming into a company brand new and trying to validate if they're a good fit and so on. So that's, I think, a challenge a number of people are probably facing. It's hard to come by.
It's like, the problem everybody's had forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like there's never an answer. It always changes.
We have a draft board that we create. So like, as we encounter people, like if maybe we're having this conversation, like, man, George is like super intelligent. Everyone's got a price. So let's add you to the draft board. I think you're really strong in this skill set.
Wow. You have a fantasy football style draft board
for people that we want. And then we try to like consider, well, if there's a time and place and need and it's justifiable, let's court them and see if we can pull them over. So, I wouldn't say we're doing anything shady, but we definitely know who we want for what jobs and who's available and who's out there and who the absolute tippy top best players are for that space, for the thing that we need. And if we can get that person, we could accomplish these things, right? So we have a draft board for a lot of different areas of the business. I mean, me and the sales team, the marketing side, I have people that they have targets on their back in a positive way that I'm like, oh boy, as soon as we get this, like I'm, like that's it's exciting to have that. But otherwise there's job forums and postings and things like that and LinkedIn and all that. So
draft board, that might be the headline coming out of here. Do you have a company draft board for the people that you're trying to actually go after?
Mm-hmm. You should.
We're gonna create a system for that. We'll make that a SaaS product, right?
There you go. Draft board. I'm sure the NFL owns that or something.
I'm sure they have it copywritten into oblivion.
But look at that's how they do it. They scout, right? They send out scouts. They watch games. They start at a very, very young age. They look for talent. They're looking for talent. Sure. They're trying to find it, identify it, and then like flirt and court and get people engage with them to try to get them. And you try to do it soon enough before it becomes something where that person is so desirable that everyone wants them, that now they have their pick of the litter. So the earlier you can identify that talent, the better off you're going to be. I wouldn't say we're that sophisticated, but I think we're probably a step ahead of most with a draft board, at least.
No, to be honest with you, I've talked to a lot of people. That's the first time I heard about it. So hopefully that's not a secret that everybody's like, oh,
I mean, people can make their own draft boards. What you do with it is up to you. It's totally different for everybody.
Yeah. Well, now we're, I'm going to sneak it in there. I was like, so you're saying Aaron Rodgers is going to be there for the whole season?
Yeah. Can you believe it? I don't know what the hell's going on, man. But they say people leave a company.
I'm not showing up. And then he's like, nope, I'm here for the season.
Yeah, I don't know. Who knows what happened in closed doors? I'm sure it got heated or something. But he was pretty candid on his press release that he had given about everything. And it seems as though, like, people don't leave a bad job; they leave bad management. And people like to work the job. If you have a job and you do ABC tasks and you're good at it, you're always going to do that job. But if you're not managed well and taken care of by the company or the organization, then that's where maybe that desire seed is planted to say, well, maybe the grass is greener somewhere else. Maybe someone else can deal with this better. So I can go do the job that I love somewhere else where I'm going to get treated better. Like if it's all the same to them, if he just wants to throw a ball, what does he care what team jersey he wears? As long as he's treated fairly to go do the thing he loves, who cares?
No, 100%. I mean, it's just a small sandbox though. Although I'm sure there's 29 other teams that would totally take Aaron Rodgers tomorrow, right? Even my buddy who's talking about Tom Brady, I was like, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, I don't know. That might be a tough conversation there. Mr. Fry, who's probably still listening out there. So you guys are heavy into security. You built your own SOC. You know what your target customers are. You have a draft board, very fun. How do you keep, you actually brought it up, so I'm going to hit on it. How do you keep the company culture up, right? Like, especially when you got people all over the place. Like, what is there anything special you guys do to maybe take people out of the daily grind and make it fun? I don't know.
To a degree. I mean, I would say you gotta be careful here with the word fun, because it gets misconstrued with things like ping pong boards and comfy chairs and all that stuff, although comfy chairs are pretty important. But I would add Jim, I think it was Jim Collins that wrote, Good to Great, and having people, the right person in the right seat. So we pick up on that pretty quick. when we bring someone on, and we try to like map their journey to where they think they want to be and make sure that they get to that place in the company. So oftentimes we farm our talent from within. So, if we're going to hire for a higher position, we'll look internally first and see, open it up formally to the people in the company that if you want to be, an engineer, not a tier 1 help desk person, let's chart your path here. And if so, we have people that were like started on our help desk tier 1 and they end up on the DevOps team, like because they have been writing, Python and SQL and all sorts of other languages I can't pronounce since they were 8. And that's their jam. So it makes sense that they should be in that role and not taking help desk tickets to solve Susie's printer problem. They're not going to be in that role very long if that's the case. So what I'm getting at here is like right person, right seat, yes, but aligning that with their passion. So people actually, again, we talk about doing the job that they want to do, that they're doing the job that they actually want to do. So they feel like they're making an impact and moving their own needle forward. So that's step 1 in all that we do, and making sure that those folks are at least excited to come into work every day to do the thing that they love is pretty critically important. I wasn't going to be in account management forever because I don't want to deal with that, but I love negotiating and deals and talking to people. So like, well, let's get Eric into sales, and that's where I'm strongest. So I don't mind coming to work every day because that job fits me. But if you had to make me do all the other stuff, administrative tasks and looking at invoices, and sorry, not only am I not going to do a good job, I'm not going to like it. So it's like a double-edged sword in that case. So from a cultural standpoint, it's like I always say working here is like working with the smartest kids in class. Everyone is so damn good at what they do. They work so damn hard that the culture is like this unspoken, I need to carry my weight because my team is so strong that I don't want to let them down. So then everyone shows up in their best form possible. And that in and of itself is the culture. So then all the other layers around that, like the baseball games and the golf outings and the ping pong tournaments and all that, fun happens around that because we've all earned a break and we can let our guard down and have a good time. And we all appreciate and value one another. So, when everything happened over the last year and a half or whatever it's been, our culture came to life in GIF format probably more than anything. But then like seeing everybody in their homes wearing hats and, gym shorts and Crocs and whatever, and then all the dogs and furry friends and kids, we really bonded in a whole new way. In addition to that, still with the same mantra of like, I need to show up and get my job done and do a good job. So it's culture for us is just strong in the sense that we all care about the mission that we're like trying to do.
No, hey, that's as good an answer as any, if you ask me. Do you, from an event standpoint, does your company send people to events at all, and vice versa? I assume that you're also maybe doing events for.
Yes to all of that. We're doing events. In fact, we have one tomorrow that I'll be presenting on Teams Voice as a phone solution. We're doing it at a restaurant, so we're giving every attendee like a meal for 4 from a really fun restaurant in the area, so they can go home and feed their families. So it's kind of a nice way to like, hey, honey, you have to go to this networking event, but by the way, I have dinner, so don't worry about it. Kind of cool and really good food. And then we go to a number of events as well. We just like sponsored a whole lot of golf outing. So some of our staff gets to go golfing or like hang out in the sun all day and drink a couple beers and so forth. So there's a lot of that. Then we have like other fun events that we'll put on that are just like more for fun and less business related. We also pay for Udemy courses and certifications for Cisco, Microsoft, Fortinet, all of the vendors that we're with. If someone wants to get educated, we cover that expense for them. In some cases, it's already included and all you have to do is like register and sign up for the account. In some other cases, it's reimbursement, but we believe in continued education. And, if you wanted to, let's say you're in a technical position, you're learning about networking infrastructure, you can take those courses, but maybe you wanted to learn about MBA because you want to understand the business side. You can go take those courses too. So we're not going to like tell people that's not related to your field. You shouldn't be in that course. We don't care. We want you to learn, and wherever your appetite for knowledge is, go learn more and use all these resources that we've provided to level up. We encourage it and reward it, in fact. So education is a pretty big deal here. And by the way, the Cisco certs are not easy, man. I don't wish those on anybody. Those tests are terrible.
Well, there's now a billion Cisco certs because they keep on buying companies, right?
Yeah,
so
right.
like, oh, Cisco this, Cisco that. And it's like, where does it stop? But I guess the answer is never, because that's the world technology is. Do you get more worried or less worried with the explosion of devices, especially on the home network with everybody working remotely?
Yeah, that's not a question for me. I know that it's under wraps, but I will say, like, I asked a question to our leadership. I'm like, well, what about the work from anywhere model? Can I
Hmm.
go work at Starbucks?
Can
The
you?
answer was no,
Oh, no, you can't go to
I
Starbucks.
cannot.
All
So no,
right.
I'm not allowed to be on a public network. So I was like, oh, and that's where the line is drawn. Okay. Like, and so now there's policy and there's enforcement, and like it literally like won't work. So
Hmm.
fascinating, right? And so those are some of the precautions that as a company doing what we're doing is different than other companies in that regard. Now, maybe there's a way around that, probably. But the general consensus is like not willy-nilly, no, but if like that's what you have to deal with, then we'll find a way to make that work. Is my guess, because we're all engineers, not we, not me, but someone can help me figure that out.
No,
But no, by and large, we're not trying to do that stuff if we can help it.
no, totally get it. So it sounds like you have fun negotiating. What's the hardest negotiation you've had to deal with? Can you tell
Oh,
us that
is that,
story?
let me think about it for a second. I mean, a lot of it's like price, it's usually price. So then I try to find levers. So I read the book Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, a very
Okay.
practical guide. And the summation of that is, if my wife tells me, Eric, I want you to wear brown shoes, and I said, well, no, I'm wearing my black shoes. The worst outcome of that is I have one brown shoe and one black shoe. That
Mm.
would be terrible in that, context. So never splitting the difference, there's all sorts of ways to like set extreme anchors and how to mirror people and how to really, kind of get more intel to then give yourself more bargaining chip to go back. So that process for me is, I've just learned in this seat that there are really no rules, and you can really get anything you want to some degree. There's always a way to get some way there. So in reading into what people have to say, I'm trying to think of what the hardest thing to negotiate was, because it was actually fairly recent. We were
Oh,
negotiating one of the government DoD companies, and one of the negotiations was that they wanted to couple a sister company with the primary entity, and the answer was no, you can't do that if you want to be CMMC level 3. And you
mhm.
could, but the engineering that's going to go into that is going to be far more laborious, far more costly. And at some point when you audit it, it really isn't going to fly. There's ways you could do it to create isolation, but it's not great. So we won that negotiation, which just felt difficult. But there's other, I don't know, there's always like, can you give me, this many hours of ad hoc rollover for this price? And then I'll say, well, how can I do that? And then you get other people to answer your questions for you. And then they start to realize how ridiculous what they're asking for is. And so not only are they problem solving their question on your behalf, they're also coming to their own terms of, oh yeah, how am I gonna do that? So in the bank robbing situation, it's like, well, I want a helicopter and $2 million. So the negotiator would say, okay, you want a helicopter and $2 million. So you just mirrored them. Yes. How am I going to do that? Well, I don't know. Can't you call in the da, da, da? Oh, well, I could do that, but here's where that would break down. And then suddenly you start to like, you're not only are you buying more time, you're getting more intel. So that process just in general on the deal side is just so much fun. So Eric, I want a discount. We could do a discount, but we can't dilute our value proposition. So the only way that I could do a discount is if we commit to a longer term. So if you want that discount, 20%, we could do 3 years. And if you're willing to commit to that, which is awkward because I don't want to get on a knee and give you a ring on our first date, but if that's what you need to accommodate here, I think we could certainly accommodate that if we do this, right? And so now we're getting someone to sign a 3-year commit, whereas before they weren't going to do that. And it was their idea all of a sudden. So I don't know. It's just a ton of fun.
No, I mean, listen, it sounds like it's more art than science, but you definitely have some cool tactics, which is great. I mean, from a guy who's my parents immigrated into the country, and they'll try and negotiate. They'll talk to the manager just because they think they want a better price and it was already on sale. And I'm like, come on, man, is it worth it for the extra couple
Yeah.
bucks? But
The
that's
hardest negotiation I went through recently was that the inventory in the auto market is dried up because of the supply chain with
yeah.
the chip shortage. So we had to buy a minivan because I got child number 3 coming. And that was, wow, some of the hardest negotiating I've ever done. And I'm like, what is going on? This is like impossible. And I got what I wanted, but it was not easy. And the way that it worked there is you compliment and ask very, very nicely and compliment some more. Oh my gosh, that is such a great price. Like, I don't even know how you did that. But I'm embarrassed to say, like, I'm not going to be able to meet you there with that one. Is there any way that like you could maybe, I don't know, could you ask? Could you see, like, could you talk to your bank? Is there another lender that you guys work with to bring that percentage point down just a little bit? Because we have number 3 child coming. So like, we got to buy some stuff. And they come back, you know what, Eric, I dropped it a whole percentage point. I'm like, wow. So if I didn't ask, it just wasn't going to happen. And that's the part where I'm like, you almost have to negotiate, because so that's on the other side of the equation, right? Like I would have been hated to be my sales guy at that auto dealership.
Like it's interesting. I take a slightly different tactic, but I've gotten some. I mean, I actually just got a car too recently, and by the way, I just had number 2, so you're already ahead of me. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
And
Likewise.
maybe I'll come and take notes, right? If I run into the next one. But yeah, no, I just I had to go buy a car. Got into an accident, totaled, had to get another one. I'm one of these crazy people that'll go out of the state, to get the best deal, right? Like I don't have to buy around me if I'm not going to get the best deal. So so I actually flew out to I'm in, outside of Philadelphia area here. I flew to New Hampshire and I drove it back.
Oh my gosh. So, and after the cost of the plane ticket and your time, did it end up being still economical?
Totally worth it. Like when you go to the your lender, right? And like, so I have a credit union that's literally down the street. And like, I always, before I even go, I was like, what's your rate? Right? Like, I'll just come with a check. Let's not even play this game. Right? Like have it ready to go.
They don't like it when you try to offer them cash.
Oh,
That's
they
not
definitely,
because they make money on the financing. They don't even make money on the car anymore.
100%. But like, so I went to my local credit union. I'm like, yeah, car's totaled, so this loan's gonna go away and get another one. They're just like, okay, let's just put it in, because they try and tell you the gap insurance.
Yep.
And they were just like, are you sure that's the price? I'm like, yeah. I was like, do you have a copy of the bill of sales? Like, yeah, here, sure. They're like, yeah, I'm not gonna even offer you the gap because like it's so far underneath. And I'm like, yep, it's a good deal. They're just like, okay, here's the check. Have a nice day.
Just go make your money on someone else, please. It's not going to be me. Like,
yeah,
you'd be better off doing what I say and like making your money back on the next guy, please.
Yeah,
let's keep going through this process.
But yeah, negotiating can be fun, but some people are really bad at it. So I guess like for the other people like you and me, it's a good thing to have in your back pocket. If you were to this last little stretch here, if you were to give that, anybody knocking down your door, right? Another MSP, another IT services company, anything like that, and you were to say, here's my best 1, 2, 3 bits of advice I can give you to grow your company, do better, decide what's good or bad, and not get anchored down into customers that just aren't worth it. What comes to the top of your mind?
Are you saying like, what am I going to recommend to another MSP?
Yeah, like if you were at a trade show and you were at the bar and you sat next to John Smith and he's like, hey man, I'm from New York, I don't even compete with you. You're out in Wisconsin, although everybody's
yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, like what would be if you were, what would be your top couple of tips for those guys out there who might be struggling with sales, right? Might be struggling with growing their business, might be taking the wrong clientele in, right? Like
I would say, gosh, there's a whole bunch of things, and I would love to hear what other people tell me too, because I'm certainly not the authority here, and I'm always open to learning more. There's just so much in the world you don't know. I don't know. Too many people have said the more I learn, the more I realize, the less I know. But with that in mind, I think, when I came on board with the company, it was a little over 4 years ago. We hadn't had a real large focus or emphasis on marketing or sales, and that's kind of where I came into the picture. And it was fascinating to me to see just how much we were growing year over year by product-led growth. And our product is our service. And so by just doing a really good job, we still get so many referrals from existing clients that's a variable that's really hard to control. You can try to incentivize people, but it's more about reputation than it is about the $200 gift card they're going to get. They care less about that. They care about like wanting to do good and make sure you're taken care of to someone else they can refer. So the referral side, if you can incentivize that, sweeten the deal, fine. But the only way you're actually going to turn that needle is by doing really, really good work. So focus on your core product set, get really good at what you do, niche down if you need to a little bit. Because if you're a master of, what is it? Jack of all, master of none.
Yeah.
You can only be so good. So for us, the cybersecurity focus is a really strong message. It's in our DNA. It's how we go to market with that. It's in all that we do. It's the first lens we put on before we touch any project. And we even do cybersecurity. We deploy our EDR software before we even do any sort of agent deployment, because we don't want to like reactivate some sort of threat inside of an environment, which has been identified before. So, just get your core stuff down, and then beyond that, like build some referral partnerships. I can't tell you right now how incredibly strong it is. I could just hang out all day and I'm going to get a couple leads from a couple insurance companies because they know, like, and trust not only me, but the company. And as a result, when they have something blow up from another MSP and their clients are saying, hey, my managed service provider had a problem, you're doing the insurance claim on that, who do you know? And it's Eric. So I don't know, there's all sorts of those. Look at the power plays that you can have inside a referral. Whoever shares some overlap with you in some sort of flavor of IT, that's not going to be a competitor, that can send you business. And hopefully you can reciprocate too, right? It shouldn't be a one-way street. If you have a way to reciprocate, that's going to be a stronger relationship. And we have cabling companies we've probably sent millions of dollars to, and I've seen this many referrals from them. I don't know if that's just the nature of the flow of that, or if that's because they don't care to. I don't know. But if you get that two-way going, it'll be a strong relationship, because relationships are two-way streets, right?
100%. No, that's great advice. So what's your over under on the Packers this year? Give me
I don't know. I mean, every year I just say they're going to win. They almost do. You're like, they come close. They're a very stressful team for that reason. I feel like that's probably how everyone feels with their team. Like, they're the ones that are going to mess it up. So I get really pessimistic. I'm like, you're just going to ruin it. Like, just make it happen, right? So I don't have to feel this emotional roller coaster.
I'll just come out and say that the NFC East was probably one of the worst divisions in football history last year. So no high expectations for my Eagles.
Yeah. All right. So you're an Eagles fan. So I'm a big Gary Vaynerchuk fan. I know he's a huge Jets fan.
That's right. Gary, he's going to be at, I mean, if you wanted to take a random trip, he's keynoting the Build It, or IT by Design conference in Jersey City at the end of August. He is the
end of August. Well, that's when the baby's going to arrive. But we did get to meet Gary Vee. We did do
it live, do it online.
Swicktech participated in his 4Ds before COVID happened.
Wow.
2019.
Love
my years are blending together. And so, yeah, we flew out to New York for a day and hung out with this whole crew. It was really exciting. So, you know, when you talk about advice for growth, maybe you can go meet Gary Vee, and that'll help you grow your company.
I'm going to ask him. when I go to that event. I'm going to be
remember
like,
the bald bearded dude? He doesn't remember me. There's no way.
He probably, I mean, unless you're a Jets fan, he probably doesn't remember anything.
I'm not. I'd be like, dude, the Packers will kill the Jets every time. Come on.
Well, they can't select a quarterback and hold them there, right? I mean, that's part of the problem. All right, but you still didn't give me the under over. 10, 11, 12, 14? Give me a number.
I don't know. I'm not like that fanatical about it. I'm not sure what the right answer is there.
Okay.
Like, I don't do over unders, but it sounds like you have some expertise there. I would say whatever is probably them getting all the ways.
Okay. So you haven't won the Super Bowl this year.
I hope, man. I hope. That'd be great. It's been a while, though. It really hasn't. It's been, what was it, 2011? Mm-hmm. 2011?
No, they won
2012.
Yeah.
It was one of those years.
Yep.
I think it's 2011.
But needless to say, if they're there, I'm sure you'll be there.
I would. Oh my God, that'd be so cool if I could go. Yeah. I'll be watching it somewhere for sure.
No, we're gonna make sure you get there for sure. Well, when the Packers play the Eagles, I'll call you back up and say, hey, come to Philadelphia.
Okay, that can be fun.
Yeah.
You'll have to show me the way out there.
Yeah. Only advice, just wear plain clothes. Don't wear.
Yeah, I don't want to get into a fight. I don't want to get punched in the face.
You'll be fine. I don't know what you're talking about, but you'll be fine.
Cool.
Eric, appreciate your time, my friend. I think we got a lot of good, kind of, real world, kind of views from your side of the pond, or train tracks, or town, whatever cliche you want.
Farmer's field. Yeah.
Exactly. So for everyone that may have want to pick your brain, or ask you a question, that may be watching this, now or in the future, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you? LinkedIn?
Great.
Facebook,
yeah, thanks for
Twitter,
LinkedIn's fantastic. I put a lot of content out there. Eric Clark, but there's a lot of me. So my background's like this red background, so it stands out. Email is eclark@swicktech.com.
So everyone take that down. This whole session was recorded. It's on mspinitiative.com under sessions. You can go back, rewind, fast forward, send Eric a question, a thought. Hey, that was awesome. You did great. Maybe talk Aaron Rodgers with him, because, the second he leaves town next year, he's going to be salty. So you better get him while he's in a happy mood. Thanks for joining us, Eric. Thanks to everyone who watched us live, and for anyone who's going to watch us after the fact. Remember, MSP Initiatives, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 1:00 Eastern time. Eric, we hope to see you back out in, Milwaukee area, when we're back out on the road in your area, hopefully when it's not cold or rain.
Yeah, likewise.
Talk soon. Have a good one.